Subscribe to this podcast to get exclusive access to the after show Shooting the Breeze. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tony Peters. This is the Cool Explorations podcast. Today we are welcoming Fouchina Kirkendoll, and we are going to let her talk about her podcast, Chronicles of a Favored Woman. And why don't you start out by just telling us who you are and what you currently do?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It is a privilege, and I'm humbled right now. But my name is Fouchina Kirkendoll, Chinas for short, and I am the CEO and founder of Chronicles of a Favorite Woman. What I do, that's actually my passion, believe I still work for now, that is. Let me just, I don't know how any way but just be myself. So let me just be honest. My goal is to help others where I didn't have it. I do not like the not having the power of my voice really bothered me. So my goal is to spread the word, and I'm paying it forward, helping those who have been in darkness, helping those who've been in silence, and let them know that they are not by themselves, that you are not alone. That's what
That
I'm here
is
for.
a very important message. Because I think
Yes.
oftentimes these days people feel like they are alone, and
Mm-hmm.
they shouldn't feel like that because there's other people who've been through what they're going through or even going through it at that moment. So thanks for sharing that with us. Could you walk us through your testimony and what God is currently doing in your life?
Awesome. So actually, Chronicles of a Favorite Woman did start off from my testimony. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I was abused for the age of kindergarten and third grade by an older adult, an older cousin, family member of mine. Um, I never got a chance to open it or had the opportunity or felt comfortable to sharing it because I lived in an environment where kids were seen and not heard. So if you couldn't disrespect an older person because if did, you automatically got chastised. So I didn't have the opportunity or the environment where I could share my story or even share what was going on. I had a pivotal moment in my life. I'll share this. I remember in the country, we all shared one phone line. So everybody heard everyone's conversation. And I heard him on the phone with another woman and I got jealous. Now I don't remember what I said, but whatever I said, I shouldn't have said. And I remember him coming over to my grandmother's house and he was telling her that I was kind of popping off at the mouth. And for me, I thought it was a pivotal moment because I can actually tell her why I was doing what I was doing. But instead, I got chastised and I'll never forget that day. I got chastised and punished right then and there in front of my molester. And I will never, ever forget that day. And it was at that moment I was like, I'm by myself and I'm going to have to survive by myself. And as a result of it, I just kept it quiet. And even though I tried to hide it, I was still living out the residue or the effects of being molested because I didn't understand boundaries. I was very sharp tongued because I used my tongue as a defense mechanism. What do I mean by that? No one could get really close to me because I will always pop off. Like, if it meant keeping you out of my boundaries, I did it
Yep.
because I didn't want you to come close to me. And it wasn't until my senior year in high school where I met someone and I knew that he truly cared for me. There was no motives. No, I know he truly loved me. And I don't know what triggered me to come out and said it, but I just broke down and cried and told him, for the first time, that was my first time unlocking that secret. And it felt like an elephant came off my chest doing that. But before that, I had to deal with being talked about because no one really understood me. I felt like I was like a black sheep because I was always different. I always marched to the beat of my own drum. I kept to myself and I didn't bother you, but don't bother me.
Yep.
And so it was, I had to deal with the rejection on some things, abandonment on some things, but no one had me. No one was there to protect me. And no one cared to find out why I was so standoffish, why I was so what they call boy crazy. No one bothered to find out why. So I had to live with that for a while. So I kind of I didn't have an identity. So I became what everybody made me out to be because I didn't have enough self-worth or self-esteem in myself to know who I am and whose I am. So that went on for years. College years, got married, didn't work out. And then I ended up with an addiction as a result of it. My addiction was pain and sex. And yes, pain could be an addiction and so can sex.
Yes.
I got to a point where I didn't feel comfortable unless I was in pain or I suffered some type of pain, even if I inflicted it on myself. It just didn't feel it didn't feel right until that was going on. Until one day, God was like, you know what? Enough is enough. I've always wanted to kick my addiction, especially the sex part, but I couldn't. I would try and then I would, I'll fall, I would try and then I would fall. And then finally, it was after I had my second son and I realized, you're doing some dumb things. You're making some dumb decisions here and something's going to have to give. And I said, you know what? I've tried to wean off of it. It's not going to work. So you know what, Lord, I am serious. I'm serious about walking with you. I know you're talking to me because you gave me my son after 17 years. There are so many things you do. So you know what? I'm making this is my covenant to you. I will wait until I get married. And so I cut it cold turkey. Was that easy? No, it wasn't. But here it is almost 8 years later, and I'm here and I'm abstinent. And as a result of it, I help other women. It's not easy, but it can be done. So I just try to serve as a reminder, because a test is truly what it is. A test creates a testimony that is designed to help someone go through their testing period, because you are showing proof that if he got you through, he'll get them through.
Yeah, and I
And
resonate
that's how I
with
live.
so much of that with my own experiences and with being molested as a child. I can understand a lot of what you're talking about, and yeah, just as you're talking about, a lot of it's going through my mind, being like, yeah, this kind of stuff is what's the same as what happened to me. So I understand. How did that shape you mentally and spiritually now, in terms of like the here and now?
It has. I used to ask that question, why me, Lord? Why? And he said, why not you? And it stopped me in my tracks when he said, why not you? When you look at people in the Bible, everybody God used came from some type of past.
Mm-hmm.
If he did, he brought them through. That's why I'm here. I said he was using me for something, but it's got me. I hope I'm answering your question, but it has used me as far as my mental state. I've learned how to create my peace of mind. I did that? The power of utilizing and discovering and utilizing my voice. Once I learned how to do that and I tapped into my power, there's power within every one of us. We just have to tap into it. And will it come easy? No, especially when you're used to not doing it. But once you start tapping into it and you start chipping away, and you understand the power of your voice, it is liberating. It is liberating. So how do you do that? First of all, you take the shame and everything that you feel and you put it to where it belongs to, the person that violated you or caused you that. You give it to who it belongs to. You pick up your crown and you hold your head up and just keep it moving. That's all we can do. And then you forgive. We have to forgive. It's not for them, it's for you. I had to realize it was me. And when I started forgiving, when I started taking the shame off, when I started taking the blame off and start wearing my crown, it helped my mental space so much, because you're talking to someone who's, thought about suicide on many occasions, When I started taking that power back, it helped me. But what ended up happening after the forgiveness, I started paying it forward. I started going and telling my story and letting people know, when you've been molested and stuff, you recognize signs when you see somebody else. And so paying it forward for those who want to be helped. And that's what I did, just paying it forward, sharing my story. And the more I share my story, like tonight, the more I share my story, the more liberated I've become, the more power I'm taking back, the more power I'm claiming.
And you're helping other people do the same thing, which is
Most definitely.
so. Looking back, how do you see God helping you all along the way throughout your entire struggle and in your journey? How have you seen God at work?
That's a very good question. I always tell people, if you ever doubt who God is, go back to a time or times when you've been in a situation that you know you could not get yourself out of. You know you couldn't, but you're here to talk about it today, then you know it's not you. It's someone higher. And if it wasn't for God's grace, I'm sure God was probably, I always make a joke about it. I know Jesus was like, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, please, I'm gonna need you to go and surround China because I got work for her to do and she's just not ready yet. I know I just go protect her because I got work for her to do. She don't know no better right now. So it was only through his grace and mercy, because what I've learned about life, grace and mercy will find you wherever you are if you want him. If you want it, he will find you wherever you are. It doesn't matter. And I know for a fact, if it wasn't for God being on my side, I would not be here today. If it wasn't for his grace and mercy, I would not be standing here telling everyone there is a God and he will provide. You just have to want it. You got to be, like Les Brown says, you got to be hungry for it. You got to want it like it's no tomorrow.
Yeah, that is so true. And could you tell me a little bit more about the Chronicles of a Favored Woman, what its purpose is, how it first began? I'd love to hear that.
Oh, thank you. So it actually I got that seed was planted in me in 2008. And I just remember being in church, hearing a sermon. I just started writing everything down. They said, write the vision, make it plain. I wrote it in 2008 and I chucked it away. Didn't do anything with it. And then I heard about Blog Talk Radio in 2012. And I created that and I still chucked it away. And I never touched it again. But I knew at some point, as I was getting closer and closer, God was pricking my heart. It's time for you to share the story. It's time for you to share your story. And I was nervous. I was worried about failing. I was worried about succeeding. I was worried about what people had to say. And finally, he said, do you trust me? And I said, yes, I do. And I remember watching the show one night, Steve Harvey, and I never watched him late night, but I was drawn to that show. And Tyra Banks was on there, and she talked about how she started a cosmetics line, and that was totally outside of her norm. And she said what she did was she went to the end of the cliff. She closed her eyes and held her breath and jumped. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to set a date, because I knew if I set a date, I would be committed and there's no going back. So it was just a matter of, yes, was I afraid? Yes. But what I've learned is do it afraid. And that's how Chronicles was started. And now we're coming to the end of our third year. August will make our fourth year.
Oh, that's awesome. So if someone was to know someone who needed a voice, or you suspected they were going through abuse, what could they do for that person to help them?
The first thing I would tell them to do, first of all, they have to volunteer. You can't make someone do something they don't want to do. But there are hotlines out there that you could go to. Oh gosh, I went blank because I want to say it. All the acronyms coming over my head. So darkness to light, that's the first one that comes to my head. There's another one. Oh, RAIN. Darkness to light is a program that people can go to where you can learn about, the signs that you need to look for as far as sexual abuse is concerned. RAIN is also another one. The acronym is RAINN. Rape, abuse, incest network, and it's something else. But those are two programs I always tell people about. But if you know someone and someone wants to come to you, and they're not going to come to you the way you expect. Some people, when they want to get stuff off their chest, they go in their particular way. But if that's, but you can pick it up. Your friends or whatever the case may be. But if they want to share it, listen, because that's really what they need right now. you may be that person or that point or that breaking point where they need to get that off their chest and just be not sympathetic, but you want to be empathetic, and then move forward and getting the help that's needed to have. Whether if you're in school, you have a counselor, if you're in church, you have your pastor, if you trust your parents, or you're comfortable with your parents, whomever you're comfortable with. But Darkness to Light and the program Rain are two programs I always suggest. They both Rain has a hotline that they can go to and call. Yes.
Yeah, like you say, they have to be willing, and they have to want to share that, because I know it's so easy for us to hide.
That's right. And I just want to let people know, I understand that it's comfortable to hide, but you have to do things that's uncomfortable until uncomfortable becomes comfortable. You have to want your power.
And that's how you get healing. Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
So as a church, what could we do to support these people after we found out and they need counseling? What could we do to support them?
Actually, I think it would be great if our churches would incorporate support groups, because it's one thing when you have people who are abused or whatever, and you put them all in one group. Everybody's abuse is different. And I think that it would be great if we could have support groups, hence the reason why Chronicles is here, support groups, so people can come and not feel judged when they come in, to just open freely. And then as a church, we need to talk about this, because whether or not abuse goes on in the church too. So that's something that we need as Christians, as people, because you can't preach the gospel, you can't declare the gospel, or you can't walk in the gospel. And if you're hiding everything under the rug, no, we need to expose it. It needs to be exposed, and we need to create a plan to kill the weed, because that's what they are, weeds.
Yeah, and create that safe place for people. That is very important, because people should feel like church is a safe place, and sometimes in churches people don't feel that way, and that, like you say, needs to change. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone who they themselves are feeling trapped in an abusive situation, whether it's physically, emotionally, or sexually, what advice would you give that person?
I would tell them there's power within you. You just have to tap into it. Want it. It may feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. The bottom line is, do you want to live or do you want to die? And are you willing to make a sacrifice to do it? It doesn't matter if you got to crawl, if you got to walk, if you got to run, whatever you got is, but don't give up. And I know you're going to be afraid, but do it afraid. Just do it.
Yeah. And I think if people were to realize that, they would really gain that sense of self back, because often when you're going through abuse, you lose that sense. You don't feel like you have a meaning or a purpose in this life.
That's right.
That's where suicide begins to creep in, and all those thoughts.
It really does. It really does. But I also want to leave them with this. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not your fault that you've been abused. It's not your fault you've been violated, but it is your responsibility to take that situation and turn it around for your good. You don't have to stay stuck.
Yeah, that is so very true. And through Christ, we should be able to come to that healing, and knowing that, he loves us. And as other Christians, we have that same responsibility to love, and to be that, like you say, listening ear, that empathetic listening ear to people who are in those situations. And I think that message alone would decrease our suicide rates exponentially, and especially in our young youth who
especially there. Yes.
So do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave us with in this interview before we sign off here?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a privilege and a pleasure. And I just want to say to everyone, once again, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
So thank you for coming on and sharing with us, and for joining us here. Really appreciate it, and all the best in the Chronicles of a Favored Woman. I can see it being very successful in terms of what its goals are. So thank you for being there for people.
Thank you. I look forward to it. You have to tune in. It comes on every Sunday, Eastern Standard Time at 9:30 p.m.
Well, for sure.
Yes, on Blog Talk Radio.
Well, I have just been blessed with so many people who are requesting to be on the show, and I'm impressed with how many people want to share their testimonies or what they're doing for the Lord right now. If I haven't got back to you, I promise I will get back to you. I look forward to speaking with each of you and interviewing you, and keep tuning into the show. There's lots of new people that are coming on here, and if you're considering wanting to come on the show, just shoot me an email at tpeters745@gmail.com, and I will get back to you.